Blood Brothers podcast, a Five Pillars production.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, my dear brothers, sisters, friends, and the foes out there. Welcome to another episode of the Blood Brothers podcast with your host, Dilly Hussain. Before I introduce today's guest, I want to remind all the avid podcast listeners that you can find this show on all the major audio platforms. And if you tune in via YouTube, don't be cheeky, click subscribe. Today we have with us a UFC fighter, someone who's been with the Ultimate Fighting Championship for 9 years, currently contending in the welterweight division with a professional mixed martial arts career of 24 fights and 18 wins. Joining us via Melbourne, Australia, is none other than brother Jake, the Celtic Kid Matthews. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, brother. Thanks for the kind words.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you for joining us at this late hour. Actually, what time is it right now where you at, bro?
It's 10:15 at the moment.
10:15. And how's it been adjusting after your first Ramadan?
It's been good, to be honest. I've done some intermittent fasting before. Obviously, being an athlete, we're in and out of different types of diets and fasting and whatnot. So the fasting side of things wasn't too much of a shock to the body. The lack of water was a little bit different to something I've done before, but it was good. It was good, alhamdulillah. I feel refreshed after it, and I actually dealt with a few injuries during the month, and my osteo said that the way I healed up was not normal. He said I was like 4 or 5 weeks ahead of where I should have been. So, I know the science behind fasting, and I know that, the healing of cells is a part of it. So I definitely contributed to that.
And are these the injuries that made you pull out the Gabe Green fight recently?
It is, yes, yeah.
What was
Without
it?
giving too much away for future opponents, but
Okay.
it wasn't anything too significant. It was a 4 or 5 week setback. So we've just let the UFC know that I'll be ready to go very soon.
Inshallah. Right. Let's start backwards. Actually, no, the other way around. Let's follow a chronology here, right? A video you posted on Instagram recently. It's a 60-second clip. And it's where you pretty quickly announced you would either in another interview, another podcast, and you basically announced that you're Muslim. Was that your first public post, or where you basically confirmed that you were Muslim?
It was, yes, yeah. Also, it's something I was very reluctant to do. I've got some close friends that, they said it would be, they sort of talked me into doing it in a good way. We mentioned earlier that, it's something that can help other reverts, seeing, another UFC fighter revert, hearing their story, and hopefully they can relate. And if they want to, they can reach out to me and message, which I received dozens and dozens and dozens of messages. People that I would never have thought that I've known for my whole life actually messaged me and said that they were thinking about reverting and they were interested in learning more about Islam. So it was a good thing that we did it. And the reluctancy came from the fact that I don't feel that I have to justify myself to anybody. And, my reversion is genuine, and I didn't want anyone to think otherwise. So that's where the reluctancy came from. But I think it is a benefit that I have made it public and let people know.
Alhamdulillah. My dear brother, you know what? I pray for that Allah gives you istiqamah, that keeps you firm upon what's most pleasing to Him. Ameen. And us all, bro. New Muslims, born Muslims, practicing Muslims, not so practicing Muslims, and everything in between. That's all we can ever ask Allah Azza wa Jal for, to be worthy enough for His mercy and forgiveness as flawed human beings that will err, that will sin. And I pray for your success and that of the whole ummah, bro. Ameen. Tell us a bit
Thank you,
about the
brother.
life of Jake Matthews pre-Islam. What was your upbringing like? What were any religious influences, if any?
There were no religious influences at all. I've always had Muslim friends growing up, and the only influence from them was their character and the brotherhood that you can see. There was no, and something that adds to the character was there was never any talk about Islam or religion or, I should look into reverting. Over, the last more than a decade, I've had Muslim friends, and not a single one of them said a word to me. So it was definitely something I found on my own, and that just added to the character that, then no one was trying to force me to revert, no one influenced me at all. And a lot of people, especially, a lot of family and friends, they probably find that hard to believe because the first thing they think is, oh, he's been influenced by someone. That's definitely not the case, and I'm sure we'll get into that story as I talk
Sure.
about how I found Islam. But yeah, the character of my Muslim friends just lured me towards wanting to not being religious, but just wanting to hang out with them more. And obviously it was just a natural progression into wanting to learn more about their way of life, why they are the way they are.
Does that mean when you were growing up, you had like, so you went to a mixed school? Were you from a mixed neighborhood where you had Muslims?
Melbourne's very multicultural, and I mean the early days it was a typical Aussie Aussie kid growing up. I played Australian rules football for 9 years, played at a very high level, always active. I used to swim in school, used to, played rugby in school, just very active kid, and that led into me getting to martial arts. And obviously, martial arts, on top of growing up in Melbourne, which is very diverse, martial arts is very diverse, and that's a great part about martial arts is there's no race on the mat. You know what I mean? And
Sure.
met most of my Muslim friends through martial arts, through Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and yeah, I guess once you bring martial art into the equation, we're all on the same journey together, and we're all trying to get better and training together on the mat. We're in very close proximity. So any what's the word? Not racism, but I guess any you know
Hierarchy of
ill
race
thoughts
and
that you grew
ethnicity.
up with,
Yeah.
or yeah, anything like that goes out the window completely. You know what I mean? So anything that's instilled in kids from a young age, from their parents or other influences, it goes out the window with martial arts, and that's what happened with us. And we became before. This is again well and truly before I became a Muslim. We were brothers, and they'd call me their brother. And
Okay.
um and these are guys that I've known for the last 15 years, and still best mates till today.
Alhamdulillah. Um, were your parents Christian? Were your grandparents Christian? Did you have Christianity around your life, or atheism around your life? Was there any kind of like any worldview that influenced your life growing up, or it was present besides your Muslim friends?
I honestly couldn't tell you what my family is. I guess having a Scottish Irish background, potentially Catholic, but there
Catholic,
was
yeah.
there was absolutely zero. If anything, it was probably leaning towards more towards atheist. Ever since a young age, I always believed in something,
Okay.
and that changed from year to year. Yeah, I ended up just believing there was a higher power. I wasn't sure what it was, whether it was an energy, a universal energy, whether it was an actual God. But I definitely believed in something, despite you know, all the influence from family, but like I said, leaning more towards atheism. So
Mm.
yeah, and so again, that just ever since I was younger, still finding my own way, not really letting that outside influence affect me too much.
Now, in that little clip that went viral on Instagram, where you basically professed that you became Muslim and that it actually happened when you were looking for a podcast on Christianity, but you came along the history of Islam by Ilyas Bil Haddad. Tell us a bit about that. Tell us a bit about, elaborate a bit on that, what was happening there.
Yeah, I mean this was like there was no like so there was no influence before this. This was the moment that just kickstarted everything, and it's kind of lackluster story. It's not really an exciting story. I was mowing the grass. We have some acreage. So I was mowing the grass for about 5 hours, and I just found the longest podcast I could find, which was a history on Christianity.
Okay.
And then months down the track, the next time I mowed the grass, I was like, oh, I'll listen to the history of Islam. Different religion, not the same religion, completely separate. That's what I thought. And as soon as I put it on, I was just like what's going on? Like this just seems so similar to to. And then I realized that Judaism, Christianity, Islam, it's all an Abrahamic religion. And in a sense, one sort of flows on to the next. And then I just couldn't understand, all the wars and all the hate over the years for something that seems to me seems so similar. And that just really piqued my interest, and I started looking more into the history of Islam, just looking at the story of the prophets from Abraham to Noah, Moses, Jesus, and so it started with the historical study, I guess,
Hmm.
and then it led into seeing that the religion is more than just history and stories um, in a holy book. It's actually guidelines for life, for everything from how to clean yourself to how to enter someone's house, how
Absolutely.
to deal with conflict. And I just thought I'm going to start implementing this into my life. So it went from the history to implementing some of the guidelines into my life. And no one knew about this. This was something I did on my own. My partner knew, but none of my close friends knew. We get into discussions and talk about Islam, and they're always like, "Man, this guy knows a lot about Islam. Like, what's going on?" But they never really jerried to the fact that I might be interested in it. And actually, one of my my best friend, Mutman, I was talking to him and his mother one day, and when I left their house, his mum said, "That boy will be a Muslim one day," and that was years ago. That was years ago.
I had dua
So
was
she had that
answered.
that little inkling, yeah, she had that little inkling, little sense. And I mean, after implementing the guidelines and the morality and ethics into my life, things just got better and better, and I could see the benefit. And then that led into believing in the worship side of things and wanting to know more. And when after about it, so this is over the period of about a year and a half. So I took my shahada at the start of this year, like the
Okay.
start of January.
Okay.
But this was a journey that I've been on for the last 2 years,
Okay.
a year and a half, 2 years,
When did the
and it's
podcast incident
and
happen?
then
When were you mowing your grass and you listened to that
that was about
podcast?
2 years ago. That was about
Wow.
2 years
Okay.
ago,
Two
yeah.
years ago.
And then after a couple of years, I knew I wanted to make sure that it was real. It wasn't a phase or a fad, which I'm sure a lot of people go through. Um, and there was no reason for me to do this. I didn't have, I've been very lucky, very, very lucky. I haven't had massive adversity in my life. Um, I've never had any addictions or any, bad habits that led me towards religion. It was just something that it was just a natural progression into it. And after a few years, I said, this is not a phase or a fad. And I said to my friends, hey, I want you to take me to the masjid. And they're just like, what are you talking about? And I said, I want you to take me so I can take my shahada. And these are my best friends that never knew.
Wow.
And this was earlier this year. Yeah, yeah. And then the rest is the last 6 months of just, really just diving into it and never been happier.
See,
Loving it.
it's crazy because subhanAllah, it's crazy because you just said it's not my journey to Islam wasn't so eventful. That is eventful, bro. You were mowing your grass. You were listening to a podcast on Christianity, which somehow then led to you for the next time you're doing your grass, listening to one on Islam. None of your friends or close people knew that you were even on this journey, and you just told your lifelong friends, Muslim friends, that take me to the masjid, take the shahada. That's crazy. That's a mad journey, bro. I'm honestly wow. So like,
Okay, it's good to hear that. It's good to hear that.
of course, no, that is as eventful as you can get. That's like it's like a secret journey you had because who were you speaking to when you had questions and things about the religion? Who would you speak? You'd think that you'd have someone you could speak to because a lot of brothers and sisters who revert to Islam, before that they have a friend or two that they always go to for like any kind of questions, any kind of
Mm.
doubts and these kind of things. Who was yours for that 2 year
I
period?
did have, I did have I did have a few. I do have I have a very, very small circle,
Okay,
which is made up of 99% Muslims.
okay,
I have one best mate who's not a Muslim. The rest are all Muslims, and it's a very small group. So there are a few boys in that group that I would talk to. But if I had any questions, I'd because I drive a lot
hmm
for training. We train 2, 3 times a day. I'm always in the car. I just pull up Islamic guidance channel on YouTube, Mufti Menk, any scholars or any YouTube channels that I could find information on, and I just listen every day. And that's where I really kept it to myself and went on the journey alone, um, until I knew that it was legit because I didn't want anyone to. I didn't know how people react. I didn't want any of my Muslim friends to be like, oh, he's close to reverting. Let's jump on and try and influence him. I didn't want to feel like I was influenced in a certain direction. I'm not saying they would have done that, but I wanted to avoid that at all cost. And so I really just kept it to myself. Any discussions I had, I brought it up. How do I say? Like it's almost when you have like a conspiracy talk with your friend, or you have a
Yeah.
talk about history with your friend.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
just a general. I just bring it up in a very light-hearted way, so they wouldn't think that I was interested in reverting or and yeah, that's just the way I approached it, and to avoid any influence. And after 2 years, still loved it as much and was just as interested. So I know it was real.
Alhamdulillah. Did you have any? Did you have any questions or doubts or things that prevented you from taking a shahada, or as they say, the leap of faith, the leap of rational faith? You know, people have doubts and questions all the time. Did you have any that stood out to you in that period that kind of like stopped you from taking a shahada sooner? Was there
No,
anything?
nothing. All the questions that I did have, like I said, I found them on my own, and double checked them and made sure the references and the resources were correct.
Mm.
And but yeah, no, everything just kept building one on top of the other and just reinforcing more and more that this is what I want. And I didn't really have those doubts at all. Even when it comes to family, like I said, we didn't have much religious influence growing up, but I know my family's very supportive. My partner's very supportive,
Alhamdulillah.
and they've continued to be. Yeah, and I guess I'm lucky in a way. I know, look, I know quite a few people that are interested in Islam and would want to revert, but my family, what will my family say? And that's sort of what's keeping them away from that. And to be honest, like I said, I don't have to justify myself to anyone.
Mm.
I've always been that way. Um, so if someone doesn't want to support me or even ask why I'm on this journey, then it's their problem.
Have you had any of that? Have you had any negativity? Any messages or DMs or like anyone like questioning why Islam? And because let's be honest about it, bro, the last 22 years we've had the war on terror, we've had two invasions of Muslim countries, we've had a media that's hell bent on presenting Islam or misrepresenting Islam rather. So we're not exactly the most fashionable uh, group to join, whilst being the fastest growing group in the world. We're not necessarily the most fashionable in that regard. So have you had any kind of negativity since becoming a Muslim or announcing that you became Muslim?
Not since no the I wasn't sure what the response on social media would be, and it was phenomenal. I think out of I don't even know how many comments, maybe like 5,000 comments and messages. There might have been a handful of negative
Mm.
comments, and to be honest, they were all about my tattoos, saying, "Oh, you can't be a Muslim because you got tattoos." And the funny thing was, the only ones that said that were not Muslims.
Yeah.
So it's just again that misconception, one of the many misconceptions about Islam. And I just message back and say my skin's as clean as a newborn baby because
Alhamdulillah.
I've taken my
Alhamdulillah.
shahada, and everything I did that was pre my shahada. So and people ask me, I'll throw in, people ask me, they say, "Do you regret getting your tattoos?" And I say no. And people will take it the wrong way, but everything I've done in my life, every single decision I've made in my life,
Yeah.
for some reason has led me to Islam. So if I was to go back and do everything again, I would do everything the exact same for the fear of not finding Islam. And
Bro,
that includes getting the tattoos.
absolutely. And this is what we call qadr. This is called divine decree. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala set things up for Jake Matthews in a particular
Hmm.
way, as he's done for all his slaves throughout time. You understand? He set things up for you not to deviate from that plan. And he knew the outcome of that plan. He just needed you to get there. And
Exactly.
so therefore, to change anything in that journey would basically mean you would not have got here. But that's qadr, that's divine decree, alhamdulillah. Um, you mentioned earlier on the podcast, you guys, growing up, you didn't have any addictions or like you didn't have any bad habits, right? And again, you're always involved in sport. Now, that's interesting. Does that mean even recreationally, you never dabbled in things which were socially normal for Western non-Muslims, like whether it be drink or stuff, this kind of stuff? You never had an issue with any of that stuff.
I can count on one hand the amount of times I've drank alcohol. I think I've maybe been drunk twice in my life,
Okay.
and never touched drugs in my entire life. I was always an athlete. I mean, I always had that feeling like, oh, if I drink alcohol, I'm gonna lose all my fitness and all my abilities. It was just this superstition that I had, which I still carry till today. The only one being is, you jump on some shisha with my Muslim
Yeah.
friends sometimes. But I still feel like, oh, all my cardio is gonna go. I'm gonna lose all my
Right.
cardio. Um, but no, I don't know. I've always been very, very headstrong. I feel like I was cut from a different cloth, a cloth that doesn't really exist anymore.
Thank
And
you,
not, and like still trying to sound modest, I guess. I feel like I was born too late.
bro.
Um,
Look,
yeah.
as you're describing all of this, I'm trying to paint a picture, which is something which is very telling. You grew up first and foremost, in your own words, someone who was committed to sport, always involved in sport, rugby, swimming. You said all those things. At the same time, you've never really had any issues whatsoever with substance abuse, right? So you say that there was a clarity of mind from a young age, right? As well as a
Hmm.
commitment to discipline and things like this. One would argue, and one could very easily say, my brother Jake, is that things were set up for you from a young age, my brother. Honestly, because those are the kind of things. I mean, look, let's be frank about it. And anyone listening, including non-Muslims, you know, there's Muslims who have issues with substance abuse and they divulge into things recreationally. They do haram, they do drugs, they do alcohol. They'll get into relationships which are forbidden and prohibited in their religion and so forth. But I can confidently say that those things are not seen as positive within the Muslim community. And it's not something you kind of do publicly and think you get praised for it or it's socially acceptable. And the reason why I'm saying that is that you never had those issues. So many, there's so many brothers and sisters that came to Islam, and the things that prevented them were things like the social aspects. Oh, how would I stop socializing when I've socialized like this particular way for most of my life? Or I'm with a non-Muslim partner. What do I do? So there's things that prevent you from accepting Islam or delaying that. In your case, you seem like you didn't have much, my brother. It's like, wow, like you're committed to sport, never really had any issue with drugs and drink. There's a clarity of mind. You had an idea of commitment, and in your own words, you said it just kind of just led you to Islam.
Yeah, and when people ask me how, was it like when I took my shahada, did I know people feel like their body's been cleansed with water and they feel like I, not in a bad way, but I say to people, I said I didn't feel any different
Okay.
because I feel like I've been Muslim for a long, long time, the way I've lived my life. I was definitely happy, like the happiest I've ever been in my life, but it's just the same when people say when I had my first child,
Hmm.
oh, how much did your life change? And I said it didn't change because I've always been a very, very family orientated person. Everything I've done has been around family and wanting children. So it's no different with Islam. I've always been, again, trying to sound as modest as I can, but I've always been very ethical and moral in the way I go about things and been very family orientated. Never, you know, I guess never done anything haram. And so it just fit right into my life. It wasn't like a big awakening. It just felt like it was almost like finally I've found where I'm supposed to be. Maybe I should have been here years ago, but I'm here now, and that's the main thing.
Alhamdulillah. Those things which you described, you said you were always someone who's ethical, someone who's always moral, someone who's always, these are very laudable and praiseworthy attributes and principles for any group of people to have. Um, Again, do you think that those things were synonymous to your understanding of Islam as you were doing
That's
research?
exactly right, exactly right. And it just fit. I didn't have to change. I didn't have to become a new person. It just fit into who I was. Obviously, there's some things that I have added in, like the prayer, which from the first day, I started praying, and I've always been a disciplined person. And like you said, some people find these values, like when we say we're cut from a different cloth, we find like these values we have. They say, oh, they're dated, they're archaic. They're not. They're something that will never be outdated. They're timeless because the alternative to that is degeneracy. And
Thank you.
like, let's not get cancelled. Let's not get
Yeah, let's not
cancelled
get
here.
cancelled.
But
Yeah,
the way the way the world's going at the moment,
yeah.
that just motivated me even more. Not for myself because I know that these things that are happening, they're never going to sway me from what I believe in my values. But my children, my grandchildren, I also need to start creating something to leave behind for them to follow some guidelines and So that was another big motivator to why I wanted to really dive into Islam and instill not these values and these guidelines not just into myself but into my children, my family going on.
Alhamdulillah. The day you became Muslim, the day you took your shahada, talk us through it. Who was with you? What salah? After which salah or before which salah did you do it? Well, tell me about the day. Tell me about the day you became Muslim, bro.
So it was just small. I said, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it at a Jummah or in front of a lot of people. I just
Yeah.
want to get my small group of guys, which they're all my martial arts friends pretty much.
Okay.
And so I think there was maybe like 5 or 6 of us all up. It was very
Was
small.
brother Mu'min there?
He was, yeah, of course. He's
Yeah.
my best friend, so he was absolutely there. And yeah, we went to the mosque. We sat down. We sat down with the sheikh for. We probably talked for about an hour, and he was. And the first thing that struck me was he wasn't in a rush to get me to do my shahada. He actually probably asked me about 3 or 4 times, like, you're doing this of your own free will. You sure you want to do this? Do you just want to learn about it today? Do you want to do shahada another day? It wasn't forceful at all, and that lured me in even more again. And in fact, I was the one that was in a rush, saying like, I want to, like, let's do it, let's do it, let's do it. But he made sure he ran through every aspect of the pillars and the commitments that we need to fulfill, and actually the leniency, which I hope there's a lot of non-Muslims that watch this that might have it, the wrong idea or wrong misconceptions of Islam. But I was shocked at the leniency. The sheikh told me a story that his whole family converted together, and his father continued to drink alcohol, and no one in the community really gave him too much of a hard time because they understood, each month, each year, he's drinking less and less, and eventually he stopped drinking alcohol, and that was his journey. And they said everyone's on their own journey. They said, don't think that tomorrow you have to wake up and pray 5 prayers. He said, start with one. He said, pick one, start with one. He said, take it slow. He said, we actually don't want you to dive into it too quickly and try and learn too much at once. They said it's a slow progress, and everyone's journey is different. And that it's just one thing on top of the other just kept reinforcing that this is what I want to do. And yeah, so we talked about all that for about an hour, and then we did the shahada, takbir, all that, and big hugs. And then it was right before Dhuhr prayer.
Okay.
So then we went and prayed together, and again, it was on a Sunday afternoon, so it was very quiet. It was very quiet, intimate. The other brothers that I didn't know come up and hugged me, and they had tears in their eyes, and it was just I can't explain it. I can't put it into words. Just you understand when they say, as a Muslim, you have brothers around the world, people you've never met.
Yeah.
And you hear them say that, but until you're actually a Muslim and you feel that, it's you could see someone you've never met before on the other side of the world, and you really feel like they are your brother. It's really insane.
It
It's a
is.
crazy
It
feeling.
is. I swear to you, it's one of the things. So I train with predominantly non-Muslim brothers. My jiu-jitsu coach is a non-Muslim. Big up to Coach David Webb. And there is a camaraderie and a brotherhood that comes with rolling in the mats and training MMA, definitely, without a shadow of
Mm.
a doubt. But the cementing of Islamic brotherhood, literally the fact that there is someone in Indonesia, someone in Morocco, some random person that you've never seen, some Muhammad, some Abdul, some Ali, and when you converse with them on the base of Islamic brotherhood, it is as if it's as genuine as you can get, right, Jake?
Yes, yes.
It's not
You
even
feel like
one.
you've known them. You feel like you've known them for years.
Yeah. What things have you struggled with, if anything, in terms of the ritualistic acts? I mean, there's the wudu, there's keeping the wudu, then there's obviously the 5 prayers. Of the prayers, majority generally struggle with Fajr or praying Isha in Jama'ah. You've just completed your fast Ramadan. How long would the fast in Australia?
It's about 13 hours
Okay,
roughly.
that's quite short.
It's not too bad, yeah.
Yeah, that's quite
It was
short.
it was it actually went down to almost 12 hours
Oh
because we have a
wow.
daylight saving, so it reduced by almost an hour by the towards the end of the month.
Okay.
It went from about 13 hours to 12 hours.
Okay, so in the UK we had 15 hours. How was your first Ramadan? What have you struggled with anything? Any of those things that I've mentioned?
Not really, to be honest. I mean, the initially before I went public, it was just trying to not make people awkward. You know, there's things that we do as Muslims that um, you know, because obviously people wouldn't realize that I'm Muslim. So that was another big reason that I wanted to go public was it's just now it's out there, people know. So if they see me do something, they don't have to ask me. I don't have to explain myself over and over again. People won't get weird and awkward. They just know. So I can be myself around everyone now. That was one of the main things, you know, like I want to go and pray, but what
Wicked.
do I tell them? I'm going to go
No, no.
hide in a room for 5 minutes, and so that was probably the main thing that I struggled with, just because I wanted to be myself, and I wanted to, you know, obviously like do my worship or anything else that comes with being a Muslim, and I didn't want to have to feel weird or hide around anyone. So, and once I went public, that was over, and everything else has been fine since then.
Alhamdulillah.
Like I said, never been happier in my life, and the Ramadan was great. I definitely felt the benefits physically, mentally, even afterwards. Like you can ask Brother Mutman, you know, we probably spend $200-300 on coffees and breakfast throughout the week. And I think since the end of Ramadan, since Eid, I think we've had breakfast one time. So just having that, you know, that month of, you know, going home to eat, waiting till you're home to eat, that's flowed on into our life outside of Ramadan. And the benefit to that is we're not spending as much money. We're home more with the family. Um, so there's massive benefits even outside of the physical benefits.
How did you adjust training around Ramadan? I know you posted a recent clip where you kind of like decreased the output, not necessarily the intensity, but it was a short clip. How do you adjust to your Ramadan training with injuries?
Yeah, pretty much just waiting and until right before iftar to have my intense session. So in the morning it would be something moderate like lifting weights. You know, I had a few injuries to deal with, so it kind of, in a weird way, you know, obviously I don't like being injured, but in a weird way it worked out because my training load had to decrease because of my injury, which allowed me to focus more on my worship, my study, my prayers. Um, and then in regards to, you know, when I did pick the intensity back up, I'd just wait till the afternoon. I'd get my heavy sweat in, and then right after I could break fast, rehydrate, and yeah, that's really the only thing I had to tweak.
And how did you find? Did you manage to attend any congregational Tarawih prayers?
Yes, yeah, yeah. So I still got to pronounce it right, but we did a full night, uh, obviously the last 10 nights of Ramadan for Layl Qadr,
Later, Qadr.
and yeah, you know, we go to Juma every Friday, you know, myself and my close friends. Um, yeah, so Juma we did Taraweeh prayer at the mosque together. We were very excited the first night,
Yeah,
so we stayed up the entire night. We didn't sleep at all,
mashallah.
and then obviously, you know, going to work the next day or going to training,
Yeah.
it was hard. So we know next time we're going to pace ourselves, finish Taraweeh, read for an hour, and then we're going to sleep next time. Because we stayed up the entire night, we couldn't sleep. We're so excited.
Mashallah.
Um, but yeah, it was a good experience, and also I'm someone I hate meeting new people. I just don't like meeting new people and talking to new people. But when I'm in the mosque, it's different. When someone comes up to me, I want those engagements. I want people to come up and talk to me. Um, you know, I want to hear people's stories. I want to hear, you know, if there's other reverts there, I want to talk to them. So it's, in a sense, it's sort of opened me up in that way, um, as well. So yeah, just another benefit to add in.
Bro, your face changes. Like I'm watching you on screen, bro. You know when you talk about Islam, your face changes. You have a sense of warmth and a smile that comes to your face. Just tell the people about, you know, to the Muslims who don't value it as much as they should, and the non-Muslims who will be probably questioning why this bond is so deep when you literally know nothing about the other person. Tell us a bit about the Islamic Brotherhood that you've experienced pre-Islam, which has only been reaffirmed since you've becoming Islam, as per what you've been saying. What is it so that feeling? Those 5,000 messages, bro, that you would have got. I bet you any money if you were to go for every single one of them, I think you'd have the whole world covered, because that's just the way Islamic Brotherhood. Well, you literally could be someone else in another part of the world, or a random person in the mosque who you don't know for Adam, but you'll embrace a conversation with them, an engagement with them. You know, tell us a bit about that. What you experienced pre-Islam with your boys growing up, and then if it was the same or more since you become Muslim.
On on their side, my friend's side, there was no difference. They treated me just like I was a brother, even pre-Islam.
Mhm.
Um, they didn't, obviously the connection now because of myself and the way I am towards them, the connection's stronger. But they always treated me. There's no difference between pre-Islam and post-Islam, which is very, very, it just shows their character. And now obviously with my input at that level, the bond is stronger there. So yeah, which again, it goes to show their character that they didn't treat me any different because I wasn't a Muslim or because I was a Muslim.
Alhamdulillah.
Um, yeah, and with the messages on Instagram, every single one of those thousands of messages, every single one put a massive smile on my face. And you could just tell they come from a genuine place. Even though it's a comment and it's typed on Instagram, you could just feel that it was genuine. And like I said, there must have been maybe 5 comments out of the entire array of comments that were of a negative, and nothing was actually too bad, to be honest. There was a few comments about my tattoo,
Mm.
and then Jesus is our savior, and I said, yeah, I agree. He is the savior. He's coming back.
Yeah,
And then they're like, what are you talking about? I said, maybe look into Islam before you comment.
100%.
Um, yeah, but it's just honestly, I thought the response would be the opposite.
That's wicked, man. That's beautiful, mashallah. Listen, we were speaking about this before the cameras came on. Mashallah, your reversion comes at a time where there's been a spike in UFC fighters becoming Muslim. So there's been yourself, there's been Rodrigo Nascimento from American Top Team. There was Kevin Lee, who's formerly with Eagle FC, but he's come back to the UFC. He's also in welterweight division, I think. So, and there's been.
We've fought before. Yeah,
When did you and Kevin fight?
I think I was like 20. I think it was a long time ago.
No
I
way.
was still a lightweight. Yeah, yeah.
Because you for
Yeah, he
3 years,
bashed me.
because for 3 years you went into lightweight, didn't you? I think about 3 years,
My
2014
my
to 17.
first, sorry, I think my first 6 or 7 fights were lightweight,
Wasn't it
and
welter?
then yeah,
Okay. And yeah, you fought Kevin
I
Lee.
was welterweight. I was welterweight pre-UFC, and my first 7 fights in UFC were at lightweight.
And then you went to welterweight.
And then obviously from 19 to 22, I obviously grew bigger and
Yeah,
developed
yeah.
and had some serious health concerns cutting weight, so I went back up to welterweight.
Sorry, what was the outcome of you and Kevin Lee's fight?
He beat me. Yeah,
Yeah,
that was the first. That was when he started his tear.
okay. And
Yeah.
you both are currently on welterweight, both Muslim brothers. I pray you guys don't actually face each other. I'm sorry, I can make that dot
I
up.
actually do too. Yeah, even though like everyone wants a rematch to try and get it back,
Yeah,
I'd actually prefer not to. He's honestly the nicest UFC fighter I've ever
yeah.
met. People find it hard to believe just because of the way he hypes fights, but if I like he just after the fight and we'd see each other a few years down the track and he'd just like give me a massive hug and honestly one of the nicest fighters I've ever met in my life.
Because when I was doing a bit of research, because Kevin might be coming onto the podcast as well, and I said, and many will be thinking, I hope the two brothers don't fight. In the same way that nearly Bilal Muhammad and Hamza
Mm,
Chimaev nearly fought. I didn't want them to fight.
yes.
There's might even be a possibility. Yeah, there's always possibilities where Muslim brothers can end up fighting each other. It happens in the UFC. It happens everywhere else in all levels of competing.
Yes.
Um, but there's been a spike in fighters becoming Muslim. There's even a video of Alex Pereira taking his shahada. I think that was in 2017, 18 or 19, not sure. But there is the video. It's on YouTube. What do you think? Obviously, guidance with Allah, bro. Someone can be born a Muslim and they can die a non-Muslim. And someone can be a non-Muslim the vast majority of their life and Allah guides them to Islam. It can happen, right? And it happens. And it's happened since our father Adam, alayhi salam. But what do you think there is? Is there anything that will kind of bring fighters to look at, or combat sportsmen to look into Islam? Is there anything already existing in their life that would make them want to look into Islam?
Yeah, absolutely. The for one, the discipline. I think just the discipline. Um, it's a healthy way to live. Like that was what I got out of it initially. Was you're not drinking alcohol. The things that we eat. Not eating pork, which I never really ate much pork to be honest. Anyway, so another point that fit into my life. And I always thought like, oh, getting up in the morning and praying just seems like it's a good way to get your body moving. That was one of my initial thoughts when I first, learned about like knew about the prayers throughout the day. So I think the main thing is discipline, but this is not just confined to fighters or athletes. This goes out to successful businessmen. Um, I think I saw Alfie Best, who's one of the richest people in the
Yes,
UK. I'm
yes,
pretty
yes. Of
sure
Alphabet, yeah.
he can, you know what I mean? Like people from the outside, you look at it, why would he need to? He's a billionaire. Why would he need to do that? What does he need? Islam must give you something really. It just must give you, it must be that good that it's just for a billionaire to join. I can't even put into words like for a billionaire to want to revert. It just seems so crazy. But I think so. What I put it down to was, we're obviously we're all quite successful, whether it's businessmen or athletes. And we get to a certain level where I don't know, those external things aren't enough to motivate us and keep us on the right track. Whether you reach a certain financial point where like I said, it's hard to get up and train when you're sleeping in silk sheets, for example. Um, it's like an extra push that we need. And that's what I found. I found like life's very comfortable where we are right now. So it just added that discipline back into my life that I had when I was hungry and when I was younger. And I think just yeah, like you say, like people said, oh, they'll when they get successful or get rich, become a millionaire, they'll retire. Which, if you ask millionaires, it's not the case. They want to continue working. They want to continue getting better, continue bettering themselves. Whether it's in business or as a on a personal journey as a person. And we operate on a different level, so it's probably hard for the average person to understand. But for people, probably for the people who need something the least, we're the ones who go and seek out, religion or in Islam. You even see like actors, who is it?
Which actor?
Mark Wahlberg, for
Yes.
example. He's always on Instagram, like, guys, stay prayed up, stay prayed up. Like, why would he, like, he's a multi-millionaire, successful actor. Why would he need it? And that should really show people who are not religiously inclined that there is something there. There is massive benefit to be gained from being on a religious journey. And that's what I put it down to is just we just can't draw any more motivation from the materialistic things of life. So we go beyond that to something spiritual.
How much of an ambassador do you think our brother Khabib Nurmagomedov has been in terms of a role model Muslim athlete, someone who's exemplified the morals and values that we've been speaking about in the UFC or in the world of combat sports? How effective or how good or bad do you think he's been in terms of an ambassador for the Deen?
Oh, massively, and not just for Muslims, but for non-Muslims too. Pre-Islam, he was my favorite fighter, and I just looked at him, just the way he handled himself inside and outside of the octagon, the way he handled the whole McGregor fight. People say, "Oh, he jumped the octagon, he had a fight in the crowd," but it's like no, don't look at that. Look at the months and months and months leading up to it, what he endured, the way he bit his tongue, the way he stayed respectful. And the biggest thing that made me say, okay, he's my favorite fighter, is that he gave up potentially becoming the, to me, he's the best ever, but potentially on paper becoming the best ever. He gave that up to keep a promise to his mum. That is what sold me, and I just said he is the GOAT. And people hate it when I say that on social media, but I always put it up. I say Khabib's the GOAT. But they don't understand what I'm talking about. It's not just what he did inside the octagon. It's what he did outside the octagon is what makes him the GOAT. And as a professional athlete, as a professional in any industry, it's not just about what you do in that industry or what you do in the sport. It's who you are outside of the sport. To me, that's what makes someone the greatest of all time.
100%, bro. And there'll be like 1 billion plus Muslims that'll agree with you, and many non-Muslims that will agree with you as well. I mean, but let's look at the UFC now, and let's look at the Muslim demographic. And I say this because the Muslim fighters you'll find in many cases are quite overtly Muslim, meaning it's not a case as some of the Muslim fighters, they're Muslim by name and you don't tend to see much from them. You know, they'll say Allahu Akbar, all praises to Allah, Alhamdulillah. They'll do the sujood. You'll see them put their hands together. There's many of these outward signs. You've got a whole generation of Dagestanis currently in the UFC with the current lightweight champion, Islam Makhachev. You've got Khamzat. You've got new Muslim convert brothers have come into the scene. Jake Matthews, Kevin Lee, Rodrigo Nascimento. You've got Central Asian fighters. There's a lot of Muslim fighters in the UFC. A lot of visible, bearded, no too small mustache guys, Muslim brothers that are fighting. There's loads, right? And it's actually very nice to see. It's warm to see it because, when you look at mainstream media and popular depictions, right? You will never find, did you ever remember the 90s movies, the gangster movies, the Cosa Nostra movies, from Casino to Goodfellas to, that was organized crime being, celebrated. It was
glorified. Yeah,
it was glorified.
Yeah.
We had a freaking generation of people who wanted to be like the Italian gangsters of the five families of New York. You find that with gangs. You find that with drug dealing and narcotics. You have entire series eulogizing Pablo Escobar. You literally do Narcos. You have this. Whereas with Muslims, you never find something that's glorifying Al Qaeda or something that's glorifying an act of terrorism or an act of crime. Whereas those other crimes have always been glorified. They've been serious, popular. So again, it's not fashionable. It is not perceptively fashionable to be Muslim in this day and age. But the divine irony of it is that the fastest growing religion on earth as we speak is Islam. And Christianity is on the decline in the West. And I always urge my Christian friends or friends who come from a Christian background, I guess, hey man, look, the next progression is for you to basically look into Islam. I said this to Jake Shields of American Jiu-Jitsu.
I've heard he's interested. Yeah.
Yeah. And I pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guides him to Islam. And I said that to his face as well. I said, look, Jake, man, everything that you're espousing, it just sounds like Islam to me. That's the thing. I can't, and I'm just being honest with you, the things that you're describing on Twitter and in your videos and of late anyway, you're just describing Islam to me. That's it. Just look into it. And if you have any questions, ask. But with an increasing number of Muslim fighters in the in UFC, do you think are we going to see more fighters becoming Muslim or looking into it? Do you think?
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of like what I call myself was like a closet Muslim, for lack of a better term.
Okay.
I think there's a lot. I think there's actually a lot like that are just, they are Muslim, but they're not overt about it. For whatever reason, they might think people will react in a negative way. Maybe it might be something to do with family, but I definitely I've seen this firsthand with people that I know. I've known them since primary school, and I never would have thought they'd become Muslim. And if you had to ask me 5 years ago if I would become Muslim, I would have said no. Like I wouldn't have thought. And I just think there's a lot of people that are on the journey, or they have reverted, and they're just very, very covert about it for whatever reason.
What advice would you give any closet Muslim UFC fighters who? Because people's reasons and realities differ, right? As you mentioned, it could be family, it could be career and brand, it could be social, it could be a plethora of reasons. But what advice would you give to any of your UFC fighters, or anyone actually? Because it's not just restricted to UFC fighters, but that's because that's your industry, that's your community to one extent professionally. What would your advice be to closet Muslims? Those who have an element of fear or an element of reluctance to perhaps profess publicly or identify publicly if any? Would you have any words of advice?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like to say like I'm coaching or giving advice because I'm by no means scholar as a Muslim, but from my own experience, before I went public, it felt like I had chains. I was restricted. I had a, I was in a box
Mm.
in terms of my religion, and like I said, I couldn't be overt when I wanted to be. I couldn't say to someone, "Hey, I'm gonna go pray," because they're gonna be like, oh, like, "What do you mean? Like, pray?" And I have to explain to them, and there's gonna be a shock to them, and it might create that awkwardness. As soon as I just bit the bullet and went public, that just lifted all the weight of the world just lifted off my shoulders, and you realize that, I think, you know, only recently in the last few years, but people's attitudes towards Islam have changed massively. And you'll probably find that the response will be good. I think most revos you'll find that if anything the negative response might come from the people closest to you, but in general on average the response for me was great. And like I said, the weight of the world came off my shoulders, and now I'm able to be who I am and be myself. And now my worship, my prayer, my study, is just elevated because now I don't have to go into a corner and hide to do those things. I can just do them out in the open.
Bringing the podcast to a close. Last June, UFC 275, you had that spectacular knockout against Andre Fiallo. You got performance of the night. You competed again in December against Matthew Semblesberger. That was a UD loss. You were supposed to fight Gabe Green, but you had injuries. What's next? What are you able
What's
to tell
next?
us? What are you able to tell us? What are we to
Yeah,
expect?
no, I mean the we've just gotten the green light to get back into a training camp. So we've worded up the UFC. We've said, look, I'm good to go. Let's get me in there as soon as possible. I know there's the international fight weeks coming up.
Yeah.
Alex Volkanovski's on it, and there's a bunch of other Aussie guys. So potentially we might fight in July. I said I'm able to go as early as late June. But as always, my entire career, I've always left it in the hands of the UFC. They've got the best matchmakers in the world. You know, they are they are the matchmakers for a reason. So I've always left it to them. And especially coming off a loss, I don't like to get a big head and think that I can dictate
Hmm.
who or where I fight after a loss. I have to earn that. I have to earn that back. Um, and speaking about that last loss, to be honest, I think it was almost like I felt like because I knew before my fight that I wanted to revert and take my shahada, and I just felt like there was something missing in that fight,
Mm.
and now I think whatever was missing in that fight, it's not missing anymore, and I'll have that back.
Okay.
If that makes sense. So it was almost like that was a sign, like, hey, yeah, you need that next step to level up, which is on that spiritual level of finding Islam. So I think that's there now. So I'm excited for the next fight, and I'm gonna have massive support around the world, and I can't wait.
You've been with the UFC for 9 years. That's
Yeah,
considering. You were 19 years. You were a young man. You came from the Ultimate Fighter. That was generally the background. Do you see your future still with the UFC?
absolutely. I know a lot of fighters say this, but I honestly feel like I'm just hitting my stride, just getting started. And people will say, "Oh, you've been in the UFC for 9 years." Other guys like Israel Adesanya, he's in the UFC for 4 years and he's done what he's done. But they have to understand that I grew up in the UFC. I had to learn on the job. A lot of these guys are established before they get to the
And they
UFC.
came in.
They're world
Yep.
champions
Yep.
elsewhere. Yeah, so they're ready. They're ready to go. They're ready to make a run to the title. Whereas, I had to fight killers while still learning. I'm 19. I was a baby, and I'm only 28 now. So I'm only just getting to that peak age where they say mentally, physically, you start getting that maturity, that fight IQ, that old man strength. Um, so I definitely felt that the last few fights, even the last fight where I lost. It was a tough fight, but I felt I definitely took away a lot of positives from that fight, which are only gonna give me more confidence for the next one. So I definitely feel over the next 3, 4, 5 years that's gonna be my peak era, and
Inshallah.
each and every fight I feel like it's my first fight. That's it. That's the excitement that I have and the love that I have for the sport. And now I feel like a new person after my reversion. I feel like I've got a completely new support base and following, which just adds to that excitement.
Um, have you ever visited the Muslim community in Lakemba? Lakemba has a very famous Muslim community, man.
No, I saw a lot of their gatherings throughout
Yeah,
Ramadan, and I want to. I actually want to go there.
yeah,
I would have loved to go there before. I've heard of the town before, but I didn't understand it was to that extent. So I definitely love to get there.
yeah. So Lakemba is I have many of my friends and contacts. They're from that part of Sydney, and Lakemba is like even outside beyond Australia. It's known as where there's a strong Muslim community, very vibrant, and it comes to life on Eid, on Ramadan, and on Fridays. So I was just curious whether you've been. Um, Personal advice. I want to ask you something personally. Um,
Hmm.
Been doing jiu-jitsu for 10, 11 months, still a white belt, competed once, got smashed. Three bits of advice, to aspiring, newly beginning, but committed white belts. 3 tips as a jiu-jitsu black belt yourself.
I mean, jiu-jitsu is unlike any other combat sport. So the main thing I say to people is, you can't hit the pads like you can in boxing and get good at boxing. You have to put the hours in on the mat. So the first thing is being consistent. I think they say, try and get two or three rolls a week consistently, and just no matter how the body's feeling, you have to go in and train. So consistency breeds success. And I know guys that do that and they get to a black belt level or a higher level, within a few years. And I know guys that train that way and it takes them 10, 15 years. But like everyone's got their own journey, everyone's going to progress at their own rate. It's just that consistency that's key. If you quit and stop, you're never gonna get there anyway. So you might as well just keep getting on the mat, keep training. So the first one's consistency. The second one is, and this is like a touchy subject, but I've always been very liberal as a coach. If I find that a student of mine outgrows me as a coach, I'll actually recommend that they move on to bigger and better things. And so if you feel that you've plateaued, you've outgrown the gym that you're at, and you're obviously as a white belt, you can learn a lot from any gym that you're at, but you do get to a point where you might outgrow that gym. So don't be scared to move on to find higher level coaches, high level training partners. So that's number two. And number three, I mean, try to bring friends into your circle that are on the same journey. So, and I guess it's the same as Islam. Try and find brothers and friends that are, devout in their worship and their study and the things that we need to do as Muslims. Same on the mat. Find the guys that are coming consistently, that are training, that are competing. Surround yourself with those guys. When you got a crew, even a small crew of guys that are on the same path, you'll find that you progress faster together. So always seek out the best guys in the gym, even if you're getting tapped out every session. That's what you want. Lose in the gym so you don't lose on the mat. So always seek out those type of people in the gym, and you can tell straight away when you walk in who those guys are, who are the ones that are always there, who take it seriously, who want to. They're not just what I call weekend warriors, which is nothing wrong with people doing it for fun. But if you have aspirations to be a high level competitor or reach your black belt, surround yourself with those that have the same goals. So
Uh,
those are three: consistency. If you do outgrow the gym, move on, and obviously the tight knit crew, the main guys that you train with.
Wicked. 3 quick questions I have for you. When you mentioned on point number 1 about consistency, so is there a level of
Hmm.
soreness that you just have to train through? The niggly ones in your
Yes.
fingers and your hands, and the ones. Do you just train through those? Yeah.
When one of my students comes up and they say I've got a sore finger, sore wrist, sore toe, I just say welcome to martial arts. If you take a day off every time you have a little niggle or a little injury, you'll never train. Obviously different, if you tweak your knee or a big joint, it's something different. It's
Of course,
different,
if you
what I mean?
torn
But
some, if you've torn something or broken something, of course. But the niggly naggly
exactly,
ones.
Yeah, no, you hurt a finger, you tape it to the one next to it, and you keep rolling. You get a blood nose, you wipe it off, you keep rolling. Even if you do tweak a knee, like obviously ice it up, rest, get it scanned. Okay, it's good. We can always work around injuries. So even if so for example, with my injury that I had, I couldn't play guard passing or top position, so I'd start working on my guard. So there's always ways to work around injuries. Um, but yeah, if you got little niggles, that's the life we chose.
When does a white belt know when he or she should compete?
Pretty quick, to be honest. I say to people, stay consistent for 2 months, and you have the basic understanding of positions, foundation submissions. So don't worry about leg locks and all this fancy
Yeah.
stuff, but foundation submissions you'll understand. You'll understand positions. You'll understand movement of sweeps and escapes. And once you have that, you could go and compete safely. And obviously, there's some people that are just naturally athletically gifted, and they just take to it a lot quicker. But at the end of the day, you as long as you have that down pat, the foundational movement and submissions and defense, and you know how to tap out, you're not going to get hurt in the jiu-jitsu fight. If it was a amateur boxing fight or kickboxing fight, I would have a different opinion. But in jiu-jitsu, it's not likely you're going to get injured as long as you know when to tap out.
And lastly, how often should we be doing weights besides jiu-jitsu? Are you of the thinking, for those who are starting, that more mat time is always better for you to get to jiu-jitsu? Meaning, are there other things that can complement the jiu-jitsu? Weights, running. What's your thing that you recommend?
In terms of conditioning, so MMA is a different story, but if you were talking about just jiu-jitsu,
Yeah, just
there's
jiu-jitsu.
there's nothing you can do for conditioning that's going to simulate a roll in jiu-jitsu. There's
So just more
nothing
mat time.
in conditioning just rolling is the best conditioning you can do. Lifting weights is always good. If anything, I'd say calisthenics work, so body weight type training,
Yeah.
a lot of core, a lot of core, and flexibility and mobility. So it's a lot of small body weight, I guess, training. Maybe do some compound lifts once a week to make sure you've got that strength. But man, mat time and rolling, that's the best conditioning for your body that you're going to get. I know CrossFit freaks, CrossFit competitors that are strong, have good cardio, good endurance. 3 minutes into a roll, they're dead. And vice versa, a high level jiu-jitsu competitor, if they went and did another sport, that conditioning doesn't carry into that sport. So if you want as specific as you can get, just roll.
Jake, it was an absolute pleasure having you on, my dear brother. Honestly, great speaking with you. Thank you for giving us your time. Thank you for joining us late where you are right now. It was a pleasure having you on, and you'll be in our du'as, my dear brother.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate it. And you'll be in mine as well. And yeah, awesome chat. If you ever want me back on, I'm happy to jump back on.
And
Had a great time.
And if you're ever in the UK, inshallah, we shall meet, and you are formally invited to my house, my brother. So spend some time with us.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Inshallah this year, we're looking at traveling a lot this year.
Yeah.
And that's one of the places on our list. So hopefully we'll get there, but I'll hit you up, absolutely.
Make sure. Take care, my dear brother. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, brother. Have a good one.
Brothers and sisters, that was our new brother in Islam, Jake Matthews. Keep him in your du'as, and keep all our new Muslim brothers and sisters in your du'as, and for the guidance of their families and their loved ones. I mean, if you enjoyed today's podcast, you remember you can find this show on all the major audio platforms. If you tuned in via YouTube and you watched this podcast, don't be cheeky, click subscribe. And until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Blood Brothers Podcast, a 5 Pillars production.